Hello, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the Democrats are very upset because Hulu won't let them air the ads that they want to air, and they went on a little rant, and I'm like, this is like literally what you guys wanted. Not quite what you wanted, because they wanted to punish the people they don't like and silence the people they don't like. And Disney, they're like, we're going to throw up our hands and not give money and we're just going to take a step back from that a little bit. And they didn't like that at the time, but now that election time is like here, and they're not going to be able to air ads on Hulu about abortion and other things. People are upset. And so I just saw a great TikTok from a friend of mine. And she's like, we're living in a clown world. And she pretended to be two different people. And one person's like, I'm so angry, that they're banning the ads. And then she's just like, you're upset that you have to watch ads. You're upset about ads. And then she just kind of looks stunned, Yeah, so it's kind of funny when you think about that. I guess they're going to air some kind of ad, but I definitely don't enjoy watching political ads during election time. It just gets to be like too much. Hashtag too much. We're going to be talking about that. Also, the White House was asked about them changing the definition of recession, which we did talk about yesterday. But I find their answer predictable. But ultimately, it's not going to work out too well, because people have eyes and they have ears and they have lived experiences, and they can just look around at the world and know that we're going through recession no matter how many times they're like, yeah, but people are working. That it's just not going to work. So we're going to be talking about that today. Also, I've been reading some bills, particularly the Protect Marriage Act, I think that's what it's called. And there's some curious things about it. It doesn't really, I don't know how many people didn't notice that, or did notice that it doesn't really protect gay marriage, but in the sense of like, it doesn't redefine marriage that it includes two men and two women and stuff. It just says that it repeals the Defense of Marriage Act. So I think it's really interesting that they included all this stuff about interracial marriage as well, and they're pushing a narrative. Like, I saw someone claim that Lisa McClain, and I mentioned this briefly yesterday, but I didn't get too much into it, was claiming that she voted out interracial marriage. That's not what happened. And I think there's a bigger narrative that's pretty interesting and pretty insulting for when I think about the Democrats and how they try to frame things. So we'll talk about that as well. So hang around. I think it's pretty interesting. But before we jump into everything today, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles I have on the website, different merchandise that we have on the website. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate to support that way. Appreciate everyone who does. If you feel that you cannot do that, please make sure that you're liking, that you're sharing, that you're subscribing, that you're adding people, telling them to watch, leaving your email, on the email list, all sorts of other things, when there's events or updates or interesting news that's happened that week or articles, etc. I want to thank the Bright Michigan PAC. I am in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, I don't care. They don't care. It doesn't work like that. I just enjoyed using the space, and I'm glad to have someone who wants to uplift conservative voices in a space to be able to do that. So I'm grateful to them as always. And again, please check out different merchandise we have on the site, like the cool goat shirts and hoodies. We got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt, which I'm very fond of. And the I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroyed, energy independence, etc. It goes on with this lousy t-shirt and all kinds of other goodies that you guys can check out on the website. So I do not have a meme today. You guys know that I like to start with something funny, but I do have something hilarious. Like, I might hit off that offended button really quick today. But this is so funny to me. I saw this and I died. It's a little video from Matt Gaetz. It is It is so funny. Maybe you won't laugh, but I died.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. As I laugh and fat. It doesn't escape me that I'm also a big woman. Sometimes I joke around that I really need to lose weight so people don't think I'm a liberal. Oh gosh. There's these skits that I do on TikTok, and there's a filter of purple hair. People say I look really good with the purple hair, but I think it's also because of the filter has like really thick lashes and stuff too. So I think it has something to do with it too. But I probably could rock the color if I really want to. I've barely done anything to my hair my whole life. It's like been this length the whole entire time. I haven't done much with my hair. I'm definitely not gonna dye it purple, but I'm definitely not gonna dye it purple being the size that I am. People will misjudge me and be like, she ain't a conservative anyway. So no thanks anyway. But he's so funny. He's so funny. Be offended. Oh my gosh. It hilarious. It was just so funny. And I don't know what they thought he was going to do. And it's not like you can talk about his wife. She's got a really pretty wife who's very skinny. So I don't have much to say other than that was a hoot. That was a hoot. It was a hoot and a holler. Oh, that was way better than any meme I probably could have found for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed the laugh. Okay, let's move on to the White House and the recession. So people notice that they change like on the site what people deem as recession. So the White House was asked about this.
Next week's a very big week for the economy. So I read the CEA blog. Is the White House trying to change the common definition of a recession because next Thursday the GDP numbers coming out are going to show that we've been in a recession?
So let me say this, the strength of our labor market along with the other economic factors is what we generally see in a recession or even is not what we generally see in a recession or even a pre-recession, because we're seeing the strength of the economy and the labor market. So that's really important to note there because those are key elements as we talk about that, as folks keep asking us about that. So Americans across the country are back to work at a historic level. 21 states, the most in history, have unemployment rates at or below 3%. That is an important number to note. 14 states are now at their lowest unemployment rates since this series began in 1976. And last month, the unemployment rate was a new low in 8 states. So again, the strength of our labor market, along with the economic indicators, is not what we generally see as we talk about recession or even pre-recession.
The growth of the job for the 3-month trend, the growth of job growth in the U.S. is shrinking, is decreasing, and 7.5 million people, a growing number, are multi-jobs, meaning they have to work more than one job to afford a living. So is jobs really a good indicator there?
Look, here's what I would say. We've always talked about the strength of our economy. We've always talked about how historic it's been, and we've always talked about the transitioning, right? The transitioning to more stable and steady growth. And so to your point about the job growth there, this is what we have been kind of stating for the past several months. Look, the economy created 1.1 million jobs in the second quarter. And around 375 jobs per month. Those are historic numbers. Those are, if you think about the 1.1 million jobs, we are back to where we were at pre-pandemic levels. So that is what we see as strength of the economy. Again, we're going to transition into a more stable and steady growth, and so we're going to continue the work that the president has set out to do to make sure that we continue to deliver for the American people when it comes to the economy. All right, folks.
So if you watched yesterday, basically she's spinning it the way that I said she was going to spin it. They're talking about all historic stuff, all these things that have happened. And, of course, there were a lot of numbers and people going back to work when they're allowed to go back to work after a pandemic, when you shut down people's businesses and told them that they can't go to work, and also paid them to stay home. So yeah, there were some historic changes that started to shift. And I've said this many times, I really feel like they destroyed the economy so they could have that narrative. And it's disgusting to me every time I see them talk about it. So um that annoys me every time. It doesn't give me warm and tinglies, and I'm not suddenly like, you know what, Biden's doing a bang up job. No one does that. No one does that. And it doesn't matter how much they try to talk their way out of this. And I was talking to my sister earlier before I took her to work, and I'm just like, who's going to believe this? Because they can say whatever numbers they want, but people go to stores and it's understaffed. Hours are shorter than they were accustomed to prior to the pandemic. People go to restaurants, fast food places, and it's barely staffed and they have to wait. My sister talked about how on Sunday they went to Red Lobster and the chefs had to come out and help serve. Like, she's like, that's weird. You know, people are so understaffed. They're aware that there's people out there not working. And then some people, they're like, the costs are so high that you just kind of have to get used to it. And they found a way to maybe survive even though the service is slow. You see signs that say we are understaffed, please be patient. I know I'm not the only one who's seen signs like that around the, different places, and people just learn to be a little more patient. But to you know kind of get used to things being so expensive to run their business that they maybe need more staff, but at this point they may not hire the staff, because the only way you can get people in is if you hire people at like 16, 17, 18, $20 an hour to do things that are very simple. um but how can like a low skilled business really survive doing that? So we're not in a good spot, and it doesn't matter how they try to spin it. People can feel it. Like, they have their lived experiences, they have eyes, they have ears, they work, they go shop, and they see that this is not the economy that we had prior to the pandemic. And they can say, well, the pandemic happened, but people are waking up, I think, and knowing that our response wasn't the best, or they're just kind of over it, and they see that our continued responses are still hindering us right now. And I talked about this the other day. There was a video that's like, there was this guy on the street and he's talking to two black guys, and he's like, okay, she's a 10, but she voted for Biden. And like, she a 4. And the other guy's like, nah, man, she a 3. She a 3. And he's like, she's a 3. And then they asked another black guy, he's like, she's a 3. He's like, okay, the collective has come together and we have decided that she is a 3. And it was hilarious. And I'm like, I don't know if those guys voted or not. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And maybe they voted for Biden and they just don't want to say. But people are acknowledging he's just doing a very bad job and there's just no responsibility there. And instead of being like, hey, we're really going to fix the problem, they just want to keep diluting you and lying to you about there really being a problem, like shifting the narrative of what a recession is. So instead of like really having a plan of how they're going to get out of it, they're going to say, well, we had a lot of job growth when we allowed people to go back to work. Like, that's not going to convince people like that they're the ones for the job to get us out of this situation, and that they're the party that's going to get us out of this. That's not convincing people. That's not convincing people in the least bit. They can try to spin it, and I knew they would spin it, but it's still bad spin. It's still absolutely bad spin on their part. Let's move on to the Democrats. Very, very upset because Hulu is not allowing their ads. Breaking: Hulu is rejecting our ads, calling out GOP attacks on abortion access, gun safety. Their shady policies amount to outrageous political censorship. Americans deserve to know the truth about these issues, and Hulu has no right to block it. Now, this is hilarious. This is hilarious, and I'm going to walk you through why it is hilarious. Because businesses, whether they have obvious sort of political leanings or not, they'll still try to play both sides, because at the end of the day, they want different deals for themselves. They want to get their own advertising out to different people. Like there was a CNBC article that called out different companies for sponsoring of some kind of Republican retreat or something, and TikTok was one of the sponsors. I'm like, okay, TikTok still doesn't like conservatives. They just want them to use their app. Like, but the point of writing things like that is so people on the left will see that and be like, I'm about to tweet at Twitter and and say, hey, why are you doing this stuff? And you should stop supporting these folks because they're bad. Wendy's is bad because they gave money to Trump and all, stuff like that. The goal is to make them just stop giving to the people they don't like. So we are well aware of what happened with the parental rights and education bill, which the left called the Don't Say Gay bill. That's what the media called, and Democrats, etc. But it was parental rights and education bill. And so there was a lot of pressure on Disney, which Disney does a lot of work in Florida because they got one of their amusement parks there. And they wanted them to stand up and say something about the bill. And so they also had like employees within Disney that were upset, like different writers and creators or whatever, that would go on and like cry, like literally like cry on Twitter and other places, posting videos about it. And they, made the CEO really react. At first, he's like, got to respect people's different opinions, but we want to make changes, but we're going to do that through our art, which is pretty evident that Disney has been doing for a long time, is doing right now, and will continue to do, trying to influence everyone with their content. That's like, when I don't understand why people gaslight you and pretend like that's not what Disney is doing. That's what like a lot of companies do, but they're blatant and are admitting it. So that was like part of their first statement. And then so after the pressure, they were like, well, we're not going to give to anyone really. We're going to reevaluate how we're giving our money and spending our money and donating, etc. And that really upset people, because they wanted Disney to participate. They just want them to give to people that they like. And Disney's like, we need to pause and pump the brakes on this stuff. And then they are also like, then they came out like really aggressively against the bill and said, we're going to do stuff and fund it and try to get rid of it. That's what their stance was. But they did also say at one point that they wanted to reevaluate who they're giving money to, where they're spending it, as far as politically, on both sides. People didn't like that. I'm a little bit surprised, just a teeny bit, that they're still like, we're not going to do these ads on these particular things, because they're bullied. They relented, but they're going back to the initial thing, like, we're going to reevaluate some stuff. So if there's some really, really wedge issue, well, it's not really a wedge issue, like abortion is something that people will be like single voter issue on, especially like on the right. I don't know if people on the left are as like single issue with that. There's probably a collective of things, but you can be on the right and be like, you know what, I can maybe think about some other things, but like, I'm not voting for anyone who's not pro-life. So I don't know how intense it is. Obviously there's intense people on the left. I don't know if it's such a single issue for some people on the left as it is for people on the right. But there's a lot of people who own guns. There's a lot of people who feel very strong about the abortion issue. And for people who want to watch TV and just watch it on Hulu and not watch a bunch of ads, they're saying, you know what, we're just not going to allow that stuff. And it's going to be both sides. And Democrats are upset about it. Now, they're the ones who basically made this happen, where if companies got engaged in politics, then you had to like utterly destroy them. You have to pressure them. Even if companies don't say anything, their position is, let's be neutral about this, or let's respect both sides. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. And if they see that you're giving, maybe you give money to both sides, sponsor two kinds of events, the fact that you sponsored the right people, the Republicans, they got to come out and they got to attack you. Even if you're like charitable contributions, like personally, or your company's values align, or the other way, if you support the folks that they don't want you to, then they got to come at you. So having a neutral policy of, we're not going to talk about abortion, we're not going to let you run ads on gun control, we're not going to do that. They're flipping out. Now, I know a lot of people watch Hulu. I don't really watch Hulu. I haven't watched a lot of like TV and stuff. I guess I'm mostly like writing and doing this stuff. So I don't know how important that sort of ad revenue, that those ads for that target demographic is. I mean, I like when I was watching stuff on like Hulu or online, I do remember like political ads, and they're annoying. They're so annoying to me. I don't like to see a bunch of political ads. The things I hate the most though are when you get stuff like texted in your phone. Like having someone like a data person call you, that's annoying, but you can just ignore the call, right? And one time someone kept calling me a lot, so I'm like, will you leave me alone if I do the survey? And they said yes, and I did it. I participated. They broke my will. But when it's like in your phone and they text it to you, I feel like it's such an invasion of privacy, and I don't like it. I really don't like it. And the best way to not give them data is just to block them. And so sometimes I will, I don't know, mess with the Democrats a little bit. Like you could text them like, what is a woman, and see what their response is. You know, but the Bernie people were like the worst though. They got caught such an attitude. Elizabeth Warren people were kind of respectful. Like I was like, you know what? I was even kind of thinking about coming to their event just to like have some conversations with people. I didn't end up going, but I'm like, you know what? You guys are way better than the Bernie people. Like I told them that. But overall, I don't really like that invasion of privacy. But if you don't, everything you tell them, whether it's yes or no or leave me alone, is some kind of data. So the best thing you can do if you don't want to give them any information is to just block them or ignore them. Because if you yes or no, that all that stuff matters as far as them gathering information. So just a little side note, just a little inside information. But I don't know exactly what they expected to happen. I know what they wanted to happen. They just wanted to be the ones who ruled supremely and have Disney bow to them and everyone bow to them and have no one give any Republicans, conservatives any kind of money, which is crazy because a lot of conservatives work and start businesses and all the other kind of stuff. So they have some money to spend. You know, Republican campaigns, like the Michigan Republican Party or the landscape in Michigan, there's a lot of like wealthy Republicans in the state. Like what our state party has been, this, I guess historically, I guess one of the better state ran parties, and a lot of people would come to work at the Michigan Republican Party as a good, all around the country they'd come because they thought it was a good pathway to get to DC and work at the RNC or some kind of organization because it's a really well-run state party. And they have sort of kind of more jobs and opportunities. There's not a lot of state parties who had a job like I had with a creative director when I could just make the graphics and the videos and stuff for them when I worked for them. So a lot of that has to do with like there's some generous donors here. So there's some Republicans who have a lot of money. I mean, the DeVos family, for example. So people just thinking that money's not going to talk and they're just going to shut down one side of the aisle. It's no. And we've seen people try to weaponize business a lot in the past couple of years. Maybe we're going to see a revolt with that. And I hope we do see a bit of a revolt and they just let people run their businesses and function without like the bullying they try to do with Disney. But this sort of snapback where they're like, we're not going to air these sort of ads, that is so on them. But there's plenty of opportunities to have ads in other places. I mean, people still watch local TV. People still watch having like stuff have ads on your phone. Like there's a local person running, I think it was Donnie Steele. Like I was on an app editing a video, and an ad for her campaign popped on the the app, whatever is editing my video. It wasn't even TikTok. I was editing it for TikTok, but I wasn't on TikTok. I mean, like, this is some really good targeted ads. I don't know who she's like paying, but there are other ways that you can put your money. Now, if everyone says you're not allowed to do ads on certain issues, I think obviously we'd run into a problem. But I guess the solution there would be people would need more folks on the ground to knock on doors and actually talk to people. So you're not entitled to their airwaves, man. You're not entitled to that, but it's totally they reap what they sow on that. Totally what they reap, what they sow. So I want to talk now about the Protect Marriage Act that the Democrats had. I think it's Protect Marriage. But the purpose of it is to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. Now, what's strange about all this is that people are pushing a narrative that Republicans who voted against it voted down interracial marriage. So on Sunday, and I briefly mentioned this, I think the other day, I was driving with my sister, and someone had sent her a message that said, St. Clair and Macomb County friends, Lisa McClain, our U.S. rep, just voted against keeping interracial marriage legal, in case you were wondering. And I don't know how many, looks like a normal person's page, and it has 112 reactions to it. I don't know how big it is now. I'm like, can you please screenshot that and send it to me? And so when my sister was like, said it to me, and one of her friends had sent it to her, I'm like, that's not true. That's not what it is. And I'm like, they conflated that with another bill that was supposed to protect gay marriage. They all put it together. And they did it so they could have narratives like this. So they could say, hey, Lisa McClain, all these other people are racist. That's what they want. Now, why did they feel that they needed to do that? It's because they don't feel that people care enough about gay marriage and that they needed to conflate them so they can say Republicans are racist because they don't think homophobic is enough. It's just like with the parental rights and education bill, which was became the Don't Say Gay bill, which that bill was about mental health. It was about, hey, if there's some important information regarding your kid's mental health, teachers and administrators, you guys cannot conspire to keep that from the parents. Like, you can't do that. And another thing that was in the bill is that you cannot teach things about gender and sexuality between K through 3. And if it's in other grades, if it's deemed in an inappropriate manner. So that's not singling out same sex. It says sexual orientation. So that goes for straight too, math, science, social studies, all that other kind of stuff that they're interacting in K through 3, you don't need that in there. And so the fact that it was controversial was crazy. And it wasn't really controversial when you actually read the actual bill to people, including the Democrats. So people went to war with DeSantis. DeSantis is about to wipe out any competition in his reelection for governor. Just totally wipe him out. And teachers unions have done some polling, and they have found his sort of policies are very popular. So people have really kind of screwed the pooch with this. So it wasn't good enough. They didn't think that the transgender ideology, gender identity stuff was a big enough wedge issue. And it still doesn't totally make sense on why they feel such a push. I mean, I've gone into a little bit before, or I guess a lot of why we can suspect. Some of it might be ideology so strong in it. Some of it might be like using just cultural Marxism to try to tear down the family, try to tear down Christian values, try to tear down America. I don't think everyone involved with that is I don't know, involved in some kind of Marxist plot, but there is like a bigger agenda is there. There just is, and we've talked about it before. I'm not going to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but it's not politically advantageous. But they know that. So that's why they crafted it and said it's the don't say gay bill, because they know, because they want to not just get that T and the extra stuff after that. They want to get the whole spectrum involved and be upset about it. And then the allies, because they knew they weren't quite being honest about how they were trying to misrepresent the bill. So it had to become a bigger issue. So with this bill, where they tried to, and it was being just, people were believing they were redefining marriage. That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. It's a Respect for Marriage Act, not Protect Marriage. I knew it wasn't quite right. It's Respect Marriage Act. That's what it is. I was trying to like look on my phone while I for the title. So people are saying that Republicans voted down interracial marriage. Now, they believe that they have to do this because Clarence Thomas doesn't like substantive due process, and Obergefell was like rooted in that. Now, there's not enough votes to get rid of Obergefell. So there's that, but they're flipping out and they're like, well, we got to make sure that we do this. And if they go for this, they could come for interracial marriage and etc. That's not something that they should be concerned about. But anyway, they decided to craft this Respect for Marriage Act. And in the Respect for Marriage Act, it mostly just repeals the Defense of Marriage Act, which was signed into law by Bill Clinton way back in the day, which I believe it was when Hawaii was like going to make it legal. So they're flipping out like, oh, we got to do something. So overwhelmingly, like, people voted for this Defense of Marriage Act. So what it said was, if your state says that marriage is between what it defined marriage is between a man and a woman, and the states didn't have to recognize gay marriage. And if you got married in Hawaii or something, and you went to another state and they're like, hey, we're married, Michigan be like, no, you're not. We don't recognize that. So that's what it's repealing. And it's saying it's not redefining marriage. It's not what it's doing. It's saying that you'd have to respect, if someone got married and they have these licenses and they did the ceremony or whatever in another state, then you in Hawaii or whatever, and now you're back in Michigan where it's illegal to get married. It doesn't matter. It's still valid over here. That's what it is. So it's mostly focused on repealing that, and whether wouldn't matter if interracial marriage was in that or not. And if they repeal Obergefell, it's not going to affect interracial marriage. So the only point of it being in there is to make it a bigger wedge issue, so they can say it's not just about gay marriage, it's because interracial marriage, and they're not just homophobes, they're racist. So I think it's interesting that people are like, oh yes, this bill, it's so revolutionary, and oh, look at all these Republicans who voted for it, when it does, and there's people who think that it's protecting, that it's legal. But if Obergefell is gone, and it goes back to like states being able to say what's gay marriage or what's whether it's same sex or opposite sex, they're gonna be able to still do that. So I'm not saying it doesn't have any sort of merit, but it's not doing what a lot of people suspect that it's supposed to do. But the interesting thing about them including the interracial stuff is that a lot of people, if you look at the data, the ones who are most likely to reject same-sex marriage are minorities. Now, the country's like over the hump as far as like support for gay marriage. But like, I think the last poll that I was trying to find like recent polls, but the last one that I saw was like maybe 51, 52% for Black Americans, there's only one group that's like the holdout, they said, as far as not supporting it, and that's like people who go to church at least once a week. Who do you think are the people who go to church at least once a week? Who do you think are those people? The highest number, at least once a week. At least once a week. So it's a weekly ingrained practice, discipline. Obviously, they make room. Their faith is important in their life, or at least honoring the Sabbath is an important thing in their life, in the very least. Because a lot of people are religious, but they're not disciplined, I guess you could say, in that particular sense. 47% of Black Americans, and then it was Hispanics, and then it was the white folks, I believe, but it was 47% of Blacks. That's the biggest group, ethnicity, that goes to church at least once a week. 47%, and white is 34. So, I'm sorry. Actually, it's 36% and 47 don't know. And I'm sorry. 47% go once a week for Blacks, once or twice a month. I can't even see that on the graph I'm looking at. Seldom, never is like really small. Like, it's mostly Black Americans go to church. White Americans, 34% once a month. I mean, once a week. Sorry, once a week. Asians, 6%. Latinos, 39%. Other/mixed is 34%. So, yeah. Now, when you look back at 2008, way back when Obama was elected, during the time when they had Prop 8 on the ballot in California, I was so surprised when they voted gay marriage down in California. That threw me for a loop. And when you had all these people who came out to historically vote for Barack Obama, a lot of them, were Black. But the numbers, when you looked at the exit polling for who shot it down, now granted, there's still minorities like in the overall population, but 70% of the people who voted to ban gay marriage in California were Black people. That's a really high number. Now, I think it was the LA Times did an article, because at first people were really kind of upset and angry looking at the exit polling, because it was like neck and neck, I guess, a toss-up between whether they thought it was going to pass or not. And so when people looked at the exit polling, they're like, oh, those Black people, they voted it down. But they were consistent about where they stood like the whole entire time. There wasn't like any sort of narrative that pushed them one way or another. They were solidly not going to vote for gay marriage. And mind you, this is like, 2008. So that was 2 presidents ago. So it was a while ago. Gosh, we're all getting old, aren't we? But still, it was a fascinating time. It was the first election I got to vote in, and I wasn't for California, so I had nothing to do with that vote, but just an observation. It was interesting. So what they found out, the last minute break in the polling that made the difference, or at least is what they alleged from looking at the data, is that there was a shift in white Democrat voters with children, because like the evangelicals who were like pushing to get it banned in California were started to run ads like, oh, what you learn in school today? Oh, I learned that I can grow up, and like a little girl saying, I learned I could grow up and marry a woman. And so they had like that sort of like, at the time they called it propaganda. And so it scared those voters, and they broke, and they changed their mind, and they voted down for gay marriage. Now, so just a little warning to people out there who are really on the far left and pushing for some pretty radical things being taught in your schools, in different schools, the pendulum might swing back, and it might swing back pretty hard. So just, if you don't want to go like all the way back to 15, 20 years ago, you might want to just pump the brakes a little bit on some of the stuff that the people are pushing, because it will make people uncomfortable. Maybe they won't talk to you out loud, but they, in the sacred aloneness at the ballot box, they will make some decisions. And there have been some people who got voted down and recalled in California for some, you know, stuff on the school board, because some stuff was out of control. So just friendly piece of advice there. But I said that all this to say is that the Democrats are really gung-ho about trying to they're using like minorities to try to instill them with anger and rage over this particular bill that they passed, when the purpose of it is for gay marriage, not for interracial marriage. Whether it was in there or not, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. And if Obergefell is gone, it's not going to do anything. So the purpose of it being in there is just a narrative to call Republicans racist, was to force more people to vote for it. Now, there was a Black Republican who still voted it down. There was one who voted for it. I was very surprised. But there was one who voted it down, Byron Donald, and he is married to, I believe, which is white looking woman, I guess. So he has an interracial marriage. So I don't think he's like invested in seeing interracial marriage fail. And Clarence Thomas isn't invested in seeing interracial marriage fail. But it's a greater narrative that they need. And I think it's interesting because they're using minorities and trying to use that rage and that being upset to push narratives to tag like Lisa McClain and other people, while they're also kind of ignoring the elephant in the room, that they're the ones who are least likely to support gay marriage. Now, again, majority of Americans are over the hump and ultimately support it. And by the way, like if you talk to a lot of Republicans, they have more of a libertarian aspect on the stuff. They were just like, let's get the government not involved in this stuff. Now, I don't know exactly what all that would mean, because you need like contracts and other, like you want them to like honor, like you go to the hospital and other like taxes and other stuff like that. And I mean, my opinion, I'm one of those people who go to church every week, like 3 times at least. So I do believe in a I guess you would say traditional covenant sort of look at marriage. I don't there was one Republican who said anyone should be able to have basically bad, crappy marriages, regardless of their sexual orientation, like she had, and she'd been divorced. Now, I don't know what her story was, but I'm like, well, this explains like how you can get to point A to B if you just believe so in marriage and so flippantly, where and don't have more respect for it. So I mean, I believe that you should really try not to get divorced if you get married, that you should intend for it to be something that is forever, not that there's not some grounds within that are valid, I suppose, to do that. But I think it's a holy sort of covenant they're supposed to have with a person, and I do believe that it is between a man and a woman as far as for my religious aspect. But I do believe that consenting adults should be able to engage in contracts with each other, if that makes sense. If you care what I care. So yeah, I do think people should be able to, shouldn't have any issues when there's someone that you want to be there with you at the hospital, and for you to say no, you can't because they're same sex, like that doesn't make sense to me. So from a government is bad, it messes up stuff sort of standpoint and lower sort of government outlook. So there's a lot of Republicans and libertarians and stuff that are kind of more like they don't care so much what you do, but they are not going to, their core beliefs aren't really going to change on those things. So people were saying like this was like a whole redefining of marriage, but it's not even a redefining of marriage. Again, it doesn't make gay marriage legal or define marriage or redefine the definition of marriage. Of it can be between two men, it can be between two women, it can be between five people. It doesn't do that. It just says that if you have a valid marriage in one state, then another state can't just ignore it. And it doesn't say that a state that doesn't allow it has to do it. So it's very peculiar. So I don't know if all the people who are out there celebrating it are aware of what it does. Because it doesn't seem like it's something that people want it to even go far enough. So it says in the bill, for the purposes of any federal law, rule, or regulation in which marital status is a factor, an individual shall be considered married if that individual's marriage is valid in the state where the marriage was entered into, or in the case of a marriage entered into outside any state, if the marriage is valid in the place where it entered into and the marriage could have been entered into a state. So it doesn't say anything about one man, one woman, etc. Now, again, it does repeal the Defense of Marriage Act that says it's between a man and a woman, and that those states don't have to respect stuff outside of other states. So it does do that, but again, it didn't need to include interracial marriage. That's not something that's under threat. And as a matter of, and I don't really I don't think Obergefell is going to be gone anytime soon. There's not enough votes for it. There's really not enough votes for it. The only person who went out of their way to say substantive due process is trash and there's like, we need to consider these other rulings was Clarence Thomas, and that was just an opinion. It had no other legal bearing other than that. But I think other people sort of signaled that that support would not be there. So it's just really used as a wedge issue. There's like Marco Rubio, other people said it's a sham, it's a joke. We're like, it's a waste of time. So they're not gonna support it, or they don't even. I don't know, but if it gets on their desk, I don't know what everyone's going to do. Are they going to be able to get like 10 other Republicans to cross over? There might be enough people who want to cross over just so there's not this narrative surrounding everything. But it's such a bad place in the world when people are making bills just for headlines and to dunk on other people. Like, isn't that crazy? Like, there really needs to be clear purposes and like singular issue bills when stuff comes into place. But making a bill and giving it a particular name just so you can say, these darn Republicans, they're racist, they're sexist, they're homophobic, they're bigots. It's just a really bad place to be for American politics. So, but that's unfortunately where we are. Like the birth control bill, where they're like, oh, the Republicans shot down access to birth control. I don't even know if everyone, well, I know a lot of people aren't aware of what's in it. So, by the way, there are two birth control bills. There's one that just passed, but there was another one that this Congress introduced. There could be more, but there was two that I read, and I kind of conflated the other day. So I just want to clarify. There was one that was 6005. That one is that pharmacies will have to supply. You go to them. If this birth control is not in stock, they have to, alert you, or if it's something that's usually in stock, when you'll get it, or find another way for you to get it, etc. Which there was a pharmacist that I was explaining it, like the bill, and they're like, "Who has time for all this stuff?" But if you wanted to deny like giving birth control to someone because of your religious beliefs, they're like, "No, you can't do that." And there is a provision in the bill that says, hey, this bill supersedes the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Now, this other bill that did actually pass the House, and I don't know if it'll pass the Senate, but it says that everyone is supposed to be able to have access to birth control. To contraceptives. It defines contraceptives of preventing pregnancy, and it lists other things, like things that qualify, including things that help you be sterilized. And I'm like, is that usually the definition? And it also has a measure in there about this bill supersedes the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So it is interesting that those bills are in there because they want you to know, hey, we don't want you to exercise their beliefs. They always say that they don't want people to push their beliefs on other people, but their beliefs of secularism, they want to push that on other people and make you have to obey the things that they say. So overall, it does seem kind of like a dumb bill, like a pointless bill that's definitely not needed. It's not like people don't have access to contraceptives. They're cheap, they're accessible. Condoms are cheap. I hear, I don't buy them, but the cheapest, easiest one you can get is free, abstinence. But people start, having demonic manifestations when I say that word. So I'll just back up off of there a little bit. So it's not like it's really a big emergency. There's not a push to get rid of contraceptives. Even if there's people in different denominations that don't believe in contraceptives, that doesn't mean that they're pushing to legally ban it everywhere in the country. It's just such an unnecessary bill. So the only thing of note, maybe you got to read it for a fourth time or something like that. But the only thing of note to me, looking at that bill, that they pass is that they made sure to note that this bill supersedes that particular Religious Freedom Act. And how they define contraceptives, I mean, people consider something like Plan B to be contraceptive. It is technically contraceptive. And there's a lot of pro-life people who don't really see a problem with that because it's stopping implantation. So therefore, it's not really like a pregnancy yet because it hasn't landed in the utero, I suppose. But at the same note, life does start at conception, so you are preventing a, otherwise, if it was not obstructed, fertilized egg from becoming a baby in 9 months. So there's people who aren't comfortable with that. For example, Hobby Lobby, that was one of the drugs that they didn't want to provide when the Obamacare was going to make them provide it, and they went to the Supreme Court and they won. So Biden has expressed that he hasn't liked stuff like that. And the Little Sisters of the Poor, who went to court twice, and he wanted to get rid of religious exemptions. So I'm leery of anyone who's trying to chip away at these things. So that's the only, that I don't know, to me that seems like that's the only really purpose of the bill. Like, so people excited about the bill getting passed in the House and people angry at Republicans for not voting on the bill. Like, I don't know exactly, like, do they want functioning bills that make sense, or do they just want headlines and narratives to dunk on each other? I don't know. We have such a dysfunctioning government. Like, my dad asked me a couple weeks ago, like, because I did run for Congress in 2014, and it was the 80-20 district, so I wasn't going to win, but it was just one of those things, like, you have to have someone on the ballot. And I did, like, run for, but someone had dropped out of the race, so they needed someone from my district to run in that seat, and I was voted for that person to be that person. But I really only had a month, and again, it's an 80-20 district, and so that was my stint of running for Congress. And he asked, would I do it again? I'm just like, for what? Like, God bless people who are willing to do that, but that just kind of seemed like a miserable sort of job. Maybe I'll change my mind. But this is something that I think I would really like to do, especially with the nonsense. The nonsense just drives me crazy, and the dishonesty. I can't stand having just really, really dishonest conversations with people who are just like blatantly just screwing with you. I can't stand it. That just irks my soul. And that's just so much what Congress is about, just fake nonsense. I'm not saying people don't pass good bills or try to do good things, or there's not good bipartisan measures that people can work together, for their district and get stuff done. I'm not saying that, but it's just so much dysfunction, and I'm just not a fan. I know people ask me all the time to run for, I'm just like, you know what? I feel like my place right now is media, so I'm going to keep plugging away at that. I'm going to keep plugging away with that. But that's that's all I got for you there. I don't plan to run anytime soon for anything. I'm just going to keep doing black tea. But if you want to support, you can always go to blacktnews.com/donate. You really want to support and you enjoy what I do. That's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show and really encourage people to read bills. Really, really encourage people to do that, but they know that people won't. They even if it's short, like the Parental Rights and Education bill was like a couple of pages, and the sort of misinformation surrounding it and the outrage, like the 24/7 outrage about it, was just insane, which led to like part of like I'm sure Hulu saying that they're not going to do the ads, so you kind of reap what you sow with the chaos with the Democrats there. But it was really easy to read the bill, comprehend the bill. It was not very complicated to understand the bill, but people just lied through their teeth about it. So, and that was just like 6-8 pages, something like that. These other pages, a lot, they're not long, like the Respect Marriage Act. That wasn't long, and neither were these birth control bills that I like read through and stuff. They're not long. They're not long. But people, our elected officials, can get away doing some pretty heinous things because they know that the media, especially Democrats, know that the media will spin things in their favor, and the electorate will not be responsible to look up the stuff to know who is telling the truth. And the more information that people have, I swear to you, they usually end up red pilled. They normally end up red pilled when they start looking into more stuff and learning that there's just been a lot of narrative and a lot of lies spread everywhere. But they'll continue to get away with it if people aren't informed on these issues. So that's one reason why I do what I do, and I'm glad when other people are willing to be part of the conversation. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles that I have. I'll have some posted about this birth control bill and this Respect Marriage Act very soon. I am still working on my book on abortion and the Christian perspective from it. You guys know that I like to normally talk secular opinions, but I feel like this is really, really needed within the church. So, and I'm really sick of people using the Bible and using scriptures and stuff way out of context for, I don't know, their opinions about things that don't make sense. So I decided, that's kind of my mission right now to complete that. So I will keep you guys updated when I'm ready to put that on, when I'm done and then ready to put that on pre-order. I'm going to be plugging away at it pretty fast, knocking out quite a bit of it. So thanks to everyone who's interested on the journey there. But yeah, I'm having fun writing it though, and it's something I've obviously been talking about a lot and have a lot of content and research already. So it's pretty easy to do. Also working on my other books as well. I did have a good time. I already mentioned this on Monday, but I did have a good time over the weekend at an authors event in Frankenmuth. A lot of people really liked Super Kid and picked up Super Kid for their books. I heard from people who had picked up Super Kid in the past who really, really enjoyed the book. If you guys aren't aware, I'm making aware right now, I do write books. I have books for adults, young adults, children's chapter books. I do have picture books, but the illustrations are still being worked on. I should have one. Well, actually, my sister's working on the illustrations for one of my books that I hope to have at the Comic-Con in October that I'll be at. So we'll see. But it's really cute. Such a cute story. I was inspired by my nephew, actually. And gosh, I wrote a couple years ago, but he was so small. It's so crazy. I wrote Super Kid before he was existed, and now he's like old enough to like read through it practically. So time flies. Time really flies. But if you're interested in any of this stuff, if you go to blacktnews.com, there's a banner that says merchandise. Well, there's a page that says merchandise, and there's a banner that will take you to my book site. Otherwise, you guys can look at my name, Christina Barr, on Amazon and find my stuff. God bless you guys. And pretty soon we're having a primary in Michigan. I'm really getting really excited about the results coming out. I have not voted yet. I usually do it on election day. A lot of people I know already turned their absentee ballots. We're about to have a debate, and I will share my thoughts as it all comes out. But I will see you guys next time.